Hello again, and welcome to the SEC Daily on Southeastern 14. I'm Chris Lee, joined by my co-host Blake Lovell. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today, including some playoff predictions and some things from some national outlets to get into. But first things first, it doesn't feel like football weather because it's about 914 degrees here in the Nashville area as we do this. But we've got Vandy and Hawaii kicking off things in the SEC this week. An only game involving SEC teams. We've got some other football games here and there. Not a great slate nationally, but thank God, Blake, football is here.
Yeah, Nashville, and I've got a sweatshirt on. The running joke on the sweatshirt thing is I've got one of those vents that's right above. This is the only place I could put my desk in here, and so this vent, man. So the air blows out a little colder when it's hot. So this stuff is just blowing right, and I'm just half the time I feel like it's 30 degrees outside. So yeah. So if you're wondering why I'm repping the Titans sweatshirt here, that's why. But yeah, week 0's here on a overly impressive slate. Only one SEC game, which we'll see what happens in that. We've certainly covered Vanderbilt, Hawaii in multiple videos to this point. So if you're on the channel, search for Vanderbilt versus Hawaii. You'll find Chris and I doing a preview on that. You'll also find Brian Edwards' pick for that game and what he likes in terms of betting on that one. We'll discuss the matchup a little bit later on here in the hour. But yeah, week 0 is here, and the hype is over. It's time to stop hyping everybody up. It's time to see.
No, wait a minute. The hype doesn't kick off till next week.
No, week 0, we officially turn the hype off. Everybody's hype is over at week 0. The season has begun. No more hype. Let's see it on the field. But yeah, for most people, that will begin next week. So
I was referring to Josh Heupel, and you completely missed that.
No, anyway. I wouldn't listen. I don't get your jokes half the time. So I mean, it is.
Neither do most. Okay, on today's schedule, by the way, Gavin Schoenwald has got today off, so we'll have him back probably on Monday. But things we will talk about today, well, first of all, we will take your comments and questions in the chat as we can get to those here and there. But we're going to talk about some playoff picks. We're going to talk about the case against Georgia is preseason number 1. I don't think there's a strong case, but it has been mentioned. It came up in the Athletic today. Maybe the NCAA is making one last gasp to assert itself. A little follow-up on yesterday, and then we'll talk a little Vandy Hawaii because, again, that is the only game involving SEC teams this week. And frankly, next weekend's schedule, I mean, we've got 3 or 4 games I'm looking forward to watching. And then it's just kind of like, ugh. Other than the wrapper and playing with them a little bit, I don't know. The week 1 schedule involving SEC teams is not the greatest. I mean, it's you get toys, but they're kind of like those little plastic army men that have got the base and you can't move them around very much, if you know what I mean.
No idea. But no, I'm just kidding. It's like you said, we'll talk about those games next week going into it. A lot of stuff for week 1 to get you ready on the channel. Check that stuff out. But all right, you brought it up. Let's just go ahead and start with the Georgia thing because I know you said the Athletic did something. I haven't read it on the case against Georgia for being the number 1 team. Now, you're going to have to really sell me on this because I need to know exactly what angle they're working with here because I don't know how Georgia's not the number 1 team entering the season. Now, is it saying that Georgia wouldn't be the number 1 team at the end of the season? I assume that's the angle they're working with here and why they won't be number 1 throughout. But I really don't know how they're not number 1 going into the season. I guess someone's really going to have to sell me on that one as the 2-time defending national champion that is loaded with talent across the board. And I don't know what else to say. And one of the better schedules of anybody in the league. So someone convince me that Georgia should not be number 1 to start the season.
Okay, I had this experience in high school in an English class where we did debate, and they picked names out of a hat and they assigned us sides, and you got assigned a topic, or maybe more importantly, a side of a topic that you didn't really believe, but you had to argue it. I got the sense that is what the Athletic was doing, just because, again, the appetite for preseason content is insatiable. We've got to talk about something. Hey, guess what? A lot of talk starts with the team at the top. But I have said this, and again, this is me arguing something I don't really believe, because the more I look into Georgia's roster, I'm going, holy cow, who's going to beat these guys? But one, okay, I'll get to the first one. in its schedule. Because we have noted many times throughout the history of our shows this summer that Georgia's schedule is not the most imposing, right? There's the West, they get, who was it? Ole Miss and Auburn. So again, it's not Alabama, it's not LSU, or not. I'm not saying that they can't get some good wins that would help them with the football playoff committee, but it's not getting to put a notch of an Alabama or an LSU or even a Texas A&M on your belt. If those teams are the top 3 teams in the West, as most people think they are. So I think you follow what I'm saying here. And look, what happens? We judge teams by, what do I always say? The number to the right of the dash. The number to the left of the dash, I'm pretty sure, is going to contain double digits. But what if it is 11-1 or 12-1 or whatever it could be? Because I said this all off season, and look, there's a long way to go between here and there. And somebody could clip this up and play it in late November, and we could look like morons. But remember what happened last year, Blake, when Alabama went to Knoxville. And that is one of the 2 things that, if you're going to argue this whole Georgia may not be the number 1 team in the country, or may not end up, I guess, to articulate it better, in the playoff or the number 1 seed of the playoff, I think it is that game in Knoxville that, if it ends in a loss, and of course this depends on what happens everywhere else, you look at the rest of the schedule and say, hey, there's going to be some other teams in playoff contention that might have had better wins than what Georgia's going to have. That doesn't mean they're better teams, but if we're going to judge teams on a resume, that is one place it could go wrong for Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they could lose 1 game. Yeah, sure, certainly could happen. I think, just based on the schedule, it is hard to find the other loss somewhere as of right now. And like we said, it can be a wild season. We saw the Missouri game last year. No one would have thought that would be a potential hiccup, but we know how close it was there. So it's the SEC, and I was half joking earlier. Yes, I don't think you can make the argument that they're not number 1 right now. Could you make the argument they're not going to be number 1 by the end of the season? Of course. And yeah, I think it's the Tennessee game's the one you circle. I would imagine, and this would be a question for Brian Edwards, which I'm sure we could probably have on next week sometime, but I would imagine that the lines, that's probably the closest line. If you had to, put a spread on every Georgia game for the season, it's going to be the one at Tennessee. Georgia would still be favored, but that number is going to be much lower than it's going to be, I think, in most of the other games, if you're just doing it right now. So yeah, I mean, I get it. New quarterback. Other than that, though, I mean, I look around, I'm just like, I don't see a reason to really doubt them based on what we've seen the past 2 years. Because remember what the discussion was last year? Does anybody remember what we were discussing at the time last year? Boy, Georgia's got a lot to replace, don't they?
Yeah.
And what they do, they won every game. Kent State game, the sky was falling, or was it Kent State? I don't remember who it was.
Yes.
They're done. They got no shot at this thing. Yeah. All right. Well, that didn't work out so well. And of course, that's the Missouri game too, right? That came right after the Kent State game. And so everything they did from there was just go pretty much blow out everybody they played. So I get it. We need stuff to talk about, but I keep saying the same thing. I've got to see it before I'm buying into somebody knocking this team off. And I know the law of averages would tell you that it's just not, someone three-peating is just going to be really hard to do. And we just haven't seen it and those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, look, if you're trying to find a model for a team that can do it, here it is. It's Georgia. Because I see what Kirby Smart's done there. I see kind of the things that he's put in place and how they do just kind of plug and replace at different positions. And sure, there's a lot of pressure on Carson Beck, as we talked about yesterday, I think. But at the same time, he's got so much around him that he's going to have every opportunity to have a huge season. And if he does, Georgia's going to be just fine because they're loaded at so many other positions on this team.
Yeah, and the schedule, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm looking at it to my right off screen. The only 2 teams I believe that Georgia plays that are ranked in the preseason AP top 25 are Tennessee and Ole Miss, which, by the way, are 2 of the Bulldogs' last 3 games. No, you've got a lot of other teams. South Carolina was close. Kentucky was close. I think Florida was in the top 30. I'm not buying it. So it's not like only wins in the top 25 count. But let's face it, Georgia. If Georgia goes down this year, it is not going to be to an unranked team, I don't believe.
They're not going to beat everybody by 2 touchdowns or more. There's going to be a close call, multiple close calls, probably. Again, just based on the way this thing works in the SEC. Doesn't matter how good you are. You're going to have some of those games, like a Missouri game last year, right? It's just going to happen. And it's going to probably, just be one of those things where we may go into it and say, all right, no chance this happens this week. And then you get a weird one like the Missouri game. It is probably just going to happen. The Kentucky game wasn't pretty, was it? 16-6 wasn't a pretty game. But it's just, I think it's just part of the grind of the SEC. But like I said, who has navigated that grind as well as anybody the past 2 seasons? It's Georgia. And so, I just getting Kentucky at home, getting South Carolina at home, not having to go to Missouri again, that helps. Getting Ole Miss at home, yeah, you got to go to Tennessee. I can't see them losing games at Vanderbilt or Auburn right now. I think just getting Auburn earlier in the season is probably better than getting them later in the season. So I think that's, that helps a little bit. But yeah, I don't, again, other than the Tennessee game, I just don't see one right now that there's any way of convincing me that this team loses multiple games. And so, but the question was, are they going to, be number one, or can you make the argument against them for being number one? Yes, I get it, but I'm not going to do it. So
here's the other thing on the schedule. If you want to squint a little bit and say, hey, let's put South Carolina and Kentucky as top 25 teams. Let's put Missouri and Florida as top 25 teams, because those things aren't off the table, right? As we sit here doing this before a game has been played.
yeah,
but
but
here's
none of
the
those
thing.
games are true road games.
Well, yes, you beat me to it. I mean, the Florida game obviously is in Jacksonville, and that like the more you try to poke holes in this, the harder it gets. Again, I think that one in Knoxville, as we sit here in late August, shapes up to me as a dandy and one of the top must-watch games I want to see this year. Is Georgia the better team? Yes. Do crazy things happen on the road in the SEC? Yes. Is Tennessee a little bit unique in terms of what it can do with tempo and things like that? Yes. On the other hand, did those things give Georgia a problem a year ago? Not really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it comes down to. So, I mean, I don't have much more to say on the case against Georgia here, because I don't really have a case. So again, we'll see how it plays out. And I don't think we learn a whole lot until week 3 against South Carolina and see how that game goes. But they've certainly had some success against the Gamecocks, as we know. So we'll see what happens with Georgia. But as always, guys, if you're watching, leave some comments. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. That helps the channel. Hit the like button as well. We know a lot of people watch this on replay because we do this in the middle of the day, and people watch after work and all that stuff. And so we appreciate all you guys going back and watching this in the evening. And so a lot of fun topics here the last couple of days since we started this on Wednesday. So every day, 11 a.m. to noon Central Time, you can find us here live on YouTube Monday through Friday. That is, I don't know. Chris may be on here Saturdays and Sundays. I don't know. He may be, guys. He may just be so excited that he jumps on without me on Saturdays and Sundays. But be sure to hit that subscribe button. We appreciate your support of the channel.
Yeah, I think we are going to have a Saturday presence. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, and it's probably going to be week to week, depending on when the big games are and such. I'll tell you this: we'll not be doing a live stream on this channel after Vandy Hawaii. That will be a late finish.
Harsh,
but,
man. Harsh.
Yeah, sorry. You might be able to find that elsewhere. But
all right, can we talk about somebody else, another doubting of a certain team?
Yes, we're going to, but I wanted to get one more thing in first. And again, this is something I got asked last night on a Twitter space. And I think this may be one thing that you look up and say in November that's ridiculous. And he just won the job, but we just don't know how Carson Beck is going to do until we roll it out there. Again, I like the odds, if for nothing other than the fact that he's got a phenomenal offensive line and maybe the most talented receiving core in the country. If not, it's got to be really close with guys that have caught a bunch of balls before. And, oh, by the way, there's Brock Bowers. So, again, I like their odds, but the fact is this is Carson Beck's first time as the guy behind center.
Yeah, seems like people had some issues with the previous quarterback at Georgia, and boy, he wound up being okay from what I remember. They really didn't like that guy for a while, Stetson Bennett, but yeah, he was he I think proved some doubters wrong eventually. But yeah, we'll see. Like you said, I get it. I understand. Like I really do. Like I understand that this is something that you have to look at. And yes, I mean Carson Beck's not the same quarterback as Stetson Bennett. There are obvious differences there, and just in terms of skill set and all those things. But I just think with the group he has around him, yeah, as I say with other people, even if he's not perfect, he's got enough help around him that they can make up for any deficiencies that he may have that aren't significant. And I don't think there are significant deficiencies with his game, just seeing him. So I think, yeah, that's where having the group and the roster that Kirby Smart's built around him will be exactly what he needs to succeed. And so I don't have a lot of doubt because I am kind of putting this in the point to where it's Georgia. It's the Georgia system now. Like I think that to me is what it comes down to. And so it's just I expect everyone they put and sort of the plug in and replace. I know it's hard to replace the quarterback and feel like that you're going to get the exact same results for someone who just won back-to-back national championships. But I think Carson Beck's the starter and there for a reason. And I think he will have every opportunity to succeed. And yeah, will there be some early things maybe that you're like, okay, he's got to improve there and there? I'm sure, because I think that's the case with a lot of guys early in the season. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we learn about Carson Beck either, Chris, until maybe that first game against South Carolina and maybe beyond that. I mean, it may take longer to really know exactly what you're getting because I just don't think they're going to be really tested very much, as Corey mentions in the comments, for a while. So,
is there, and again, I don't think this is a topic that we believe in strongly, but we're just going over it because it is a topic. Is there anything else out there with Georgia that gives you just the slightest pause for concern going into the season? I think if you wanted to find something else, you would say
I got
they
something.
did once again lose a crap ton of guys on defense to the NFL, but again, that didn't matter a year ago. So, yeah.
It's the C word. It's the same. It's what did Kirby Smart say time and time again at SEC? He said this all summer long. It's complacency. Like you've won back-to-back national championships, and you're being told you've won back-to-back national championships, and you're being told how easy your schedule is, and you're being told that you're going to be the first team to three-peat since what was it, Chris? I don't remember. Was it Minnesota in the 30s or the 40s or something? I don't remember what the stat was. But yeah, so that's it. It's believing your own hype, but man, these guys got every reason to believe their own hype. And so, but again, they're college players and they're college kids. So I just don't think that has been. That's like I said. I think that's where you will see maybe some of that come in because of the way this schedule plays out. Could you see that early on in a game against South Carolina? Could you see that early on in a game at Auburn? Sure, you could see a team that maybe has just come out and won their first two games by 50 points each, and maybe. I mean, that's certainly the other thing that I think you look at. It's just it's that hunger to just keep doing it again and again and again. But I go back to I think this is a Kirby Smart thing. I have no reason to believe that he's going to allow that to happen. And if he does, I have every reason to believe that he'll get it corrected because that's what we've seen every time you feel like in these past couple years that maybe they're slipping a little bit. Yeah, but then they just turn things around and they take off. So yeah, I just that's the only thing is the complacency word. But I'm not saying anything that Kirby Smart hasn't said to the media or his team probably 50 times in the last 6 months. So
Walking around practice screaming at everybody through a bullhorn is a good way to fight complacency.
yeah, I mean, listen, that's one way to do it. So I agree.
Okay, Blake, the Athletic made its playoff picks. It utilized 8 writers to give us their 4 teams each. And there were 9 teams that got selected, including Georgia, to make the college football playoff by their college football writers. Guess who was missing from that list of 9 teams?
Well, I mean, I could go down probably quite a list in the SEC, but I think the team you're thinking of is I was going to say Vanderbilt. My goodness. Well, Vanderbilt's probably not in there too, and that's
They
not.
were missing.
I was going to say I could probably say a lot of SEC teams are missing. Everyone except for Georgia, I suppose, maybe LSU, but I assume Alabama is the direction we're heading in here, since it says it in the title of our video. So.
Well, and Tennessee too, for that matter. I mean, Tennessee, the crazier things have happened than Tennessee making the playoff this year, or for that matter, Texas A&M. But yes, there were two teams that got pegged by at least one of the Athletics college football writers from the SEC to make the playoff. Georgia and LSU. The other teams were Michigan, Southern Cal, Clemson, Washington, Florida State, Ohio State, and Texas, which will be, of course, in the SEC a year from now, but no Oklahoma. Were you surprised at that? No.
I'm not surprised by it. I think it's a dangerous game to play.
Nine riders.
Excuse me,
8 riders. Not
look,
one.
We've all talked about this over the entire offseason. Like, it is like Alabama has just fallen off a cliff, is what some people make it sound like. I don't think we've said it that way. Did I pick LSU to win the West? Yes, I did. And I could very well be wrong about that. But there are some people, I think, who are just expecting Alabama to fall off a cliff. I don't know if we need to remind people of this, but Alabama's won at least 11 games every single season since 2010. So I don't really see them falling off a cliff and not even being near the playoff discussion. And I'm not saying that that's what these writers said, is that Alabama, finishes 20th or something. But I just tend to think that, like I said, I'm not doubting Alabama. I just happen to pick LSU over them, I think. And I keep pointing out the same thing. I just feel like it's when you have the question that they have at quarterback, I think it's going to, kind of escalate the concern a bit, because it is quarterback, right? And we've seen what happens when teams don't have a quarterback they feel like they can rely on for 12 straight games. And maybe it is Jalen Milroe. Maybe it is one of the other. I don't know. And so I think that's it. I mean, how many of those teams, Chris? You just mentioned all those teams, right? How many of those teams that they picked have significant questions at quarterback? My guess is none of them. So I just think that's where it starts. And look, I mean, you do have to replace some really outstanding guys on the defensive side. You have to replace some outstanding guys on the offensive side, which starts at quarterback with Bryce Young. But I'm not of the belief that Alabama is just going to all of a sudden fall off a cliff. And I'm not saying that they are saying that, but yeah, I mean, doubt Alabama at your own peril, right? I mean, I think it's exactly what Nick Saban wants. This is perfect. This is the ultimate setup for them, is that for once, everybody doesn't have Alabama at number 1 or number 2 behind Georgia. And there are so many people for the first time that are seemingly saying, hey, Alabama may not make the playoff, and they're not a favorite to make the playoff. I didn't pick them to make a playoff. I think you're the only one that picked them to make the playoff of our entire group. So I think you also picked LSU to win the West. So I want you to explain that one. But it's okay. I'm just saying, I think it is one of those things that I think this is what Alabama, they're feeding off of this, because I think the demise is greatly exaggerated for this Alabama team in 2023.
Well, my real explanation is I didn't think it through as well as I could have. But
hedge your bets, as always. The ultimate 50-50 guy is me. Right? I try to play both sides. So next week, I'm picking Alabama to win the whole thing. So,
well, and there is a scenario where it could happen. Sometimes you benefit by not playing in the title game, and I felt like that's what's going to happen with Alabama, is they might sneak in the back door as the 4 by virtue of not playing Georgia this year, which would again have to come in the SEC title game. But I mean, I want to go back to something you said, because look, we just spent time trying to pick apart Georgia, and part of the rationale for that is, hey, you starting quarterback, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Ohio State, you starting quarterback, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. It's not like Alabama is the only team in this boat, Blake.
No, but I tend to think that the Carson Beck thing is, I don't know. I just feel like there's just more confidence in him. based on what we've seen. I just don't, you know what I mean? Like even any of the guys that Alabama potentially starts, like is there I mean, I think it's just a confidence thing, Chris. I think that's what it comes down to. And everybody has different opinions on skill sets and such. But, like you said, I think we saw certainly some positive things from Jalen Milroe when he had to step in. But, is he ready for that spot? We don't know. We don't know the answer to that. And yes, you can say the same thing about Carson Beck, but I think you give Georgia the benefit of the doubt, though, based on what they've done the past 2 years. And you should give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. But I think it's just such a significant change from going from Bryce Young to the next guy. And maybe people will wind up saying the same thing about going from Stetson Bennett to the next guy. But so I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to that for sure. So,
well, I said there's no difference. That's not exactly the truth. The difference is Georgia has named a starting quarterback.
yeah.
Alabama has not. If Nick Saban had come out a month ago and said, Jalen Milroe's our guy, would we be having a different discussion?
I mean, possibly. I mean, maybe. So, yeah, it could be. But I think the uncertainty. It's uncertainty. Like that's it. Like it's just there is uncertainty there, and I think again it gets magnified because it's the quarterback position. And if we were talking about what is Alabama going to do at tight end, it'd be much different. If Bryce Young was under center, but it's quarterback, and that dictates your offense and a lot of other things. So, yeah. But I mean, as I said, I think doubt Alabama if you want. We've seen this before, but just because they're going to be in the mix. I'd be shocked if they're not, right? But let's say though, if you play the worst case scenario, yeah, I mean they don't have. You look at their schedule, right? We talked about Alabama's schedule this year, and I think you look at, and I'm going to pull it up right now because I'm trying to think of the dates off the top of my head. But I mean, look, they got Texas, they got Ole Miss, they got to go to A&M, they got Tennessee, they got LSU, got to go to Kentucky. That's a tricky one, maybe late in the season. Got to go to Mississippi State. So Alabama, just because they're in the West, the schedule's not easy, and they got Texas, as we said, which Texas is a team that could be in the playoff. I think I picked them to make the playoff, didn't I? So I think they can lose this game and still get there, but. Yeah, I mean, Alabama's schedule is not the easiest, man, when you look at it. So, we'll see.
Yeah, they don't really have a break-in phase. I mean, Middle Tennessee State to open the year, they're 39-point favorites. Should be a game that they win easily, but they don't have a stretch where they've got 2 layups back to back, which was kind of interesting. You have some other teams in this league that have 2 or 3 games right off the bat where they can break things in. But look, uncertainty cuts 2 ways, right? And what I mean by that is, are we certain one of these guys isn't going to land the job and be a stud? I mean, Tyler Simpson was recruited by everybody in the country a couple of years ago. Jalen Milroe, for his faults as a passer, I remember watching that Arkansas game a year ago. He was a headache to defend with his feet. Sometimes I wonder if maybe we are not considering the other side of the coin enough. Now, like Alabama fans, I'm sure are, but that's. I mean, do we really believe Nick Saban has built a roster where they don't have an answer at quarterback somewhere?
No, but I think the comparison too is important. I think it's what around you in the league. Who all have we been talking about this offseason? We've been talking about Jaden Daniels, the Heisman favorite. We've been talking about KJ Jefferson could get there if Arkansas has a good season, the numbers he could put up. Will Rogers is back. Think of the experience that's there. We don't know exactly what the offense is going to look like, but they're going to give him every chance to succeed. Like we said, Carson Beck could get there if Georgia goes undefeated again, because that's going to be a byproduct of them scoring points, and he will be involved in most of those points that are scored. And so, like, you keep going on and on about that stuff. So, like, there's just a lot of good quarterbacks in the league. So I think that's something to really think about. You're comparing sort of the unknown against that. So, yeah, so we'll see. But
well, here's the other thing. When we went to Carson Beck and we kind of outlined the reasons you could have some doubts about Georgia based on that, what did I say? I said, look at that receiving room. He is set up very well to succeed just with the guys that they've got in that room around him to throw to. Now, look, they don't have Brock Bowers in Tuscaloosa, but that receiving room, when I watched them a year ago, Blake, that to me, that room took a couple of drops down from what we have seen out of Alabama receiving corps recently, which have included Heisman Trophy winners, among other things. But Malik Benson has gotten some love. There's talk that he's as talented as they've got. Ja'Cory Brooks was solid last year, should be better. Jermaine Burton, I think, will be better. They've got highly regarded guys behind them. They're pretty good at tight end. They bring in C.J. Dupree, who was productive at Maryland. They've got Amarina Black further down the depth chart, who's a talented player. I do wonder if maybe one of these storylines we are not talking about enough is that Alabama's receivers room is better, and that gives whoever gets that job a little more confidence.
I mean, I think we've talked about it. I think we said if you just look at the production coming back, there's a ton of production coming back for Alabama's receiver group. And Malik Benson, as we said, added to the mix. I mean, yeah, it may be underplayed nationally, but we've discussed it quite a bit this offseason. Is that's one of the potential strengths, I think, just in terms of the returning production that's there. So, yeah, but I think that's certainly. I mean, look, there's a debate going on in the comments right now. Motivated's talking about just the defense in Alabama. That could be something that he, looks at, and Corey's talking about just sort of the defensive line not being the problem, just sort of just how Milroe. You talked about it, Chris. Just sort of what Milroe can do with his feet, and I know Motivated had a comment about Arkansas having the worst defense. I'm not saying. Listen, I'm not saying Arkansas is going to win 11 games. I just don't know if that's going to happen. But we're just talking about the numbers for KJ Jefferson. But it will take a great season for him to be in a Heisman conversation. It's not going to take. I think he'll be there in terms of one of the best in the SEC for sure. But so yeah, there you go. But anything else, Chris, on Alabama here before?
Well, I think that the Alabama couldn't defend last year narrative got overdone. Look, I'm not going to say I couldn't see the problems, right? Because you watched the Tennessee game. Did their secondary look good that day? No, it did not. But look, if you want to hold every team in the country to that standard, you have a long list of teams with problems. Again, you brought this up earlier. If you watch Georgia that's a bad comparison because Georgia knew that it could win that game in its sleep. But my point is, if you want to tune in on a certain day against any team at any time, you can find something to pick apart. I'm trying to find it here, and I think I just have. That's why I'm stalling for time. Alabama last year, if you take out sacks, gave up, I think it was 4.7 yards per throw. Again, a sack is a pass play, so that comes off your passing yardage, and that goes out of the books as a rush play. But 4.7 yards per pass play, that's elite. Now, where they had trouble, and I think maybe this got alluded to in the comments, 4.5 yards per rush play. That is not what we're used to seeing with Alabama because it's got first and second round defensive linemen tackle to tackle and studs at linebacker. And, you don't have any more chance running against them most years, week in and week out, than you and I do. I think that's where they slipped a little bit that nobody's talking about. And maybe that's a spot where, hey, if quarterback gets answered and they're okay, and again, they've got some talent there, maybe that's a spot where Alabama's just not back enough yet to get back to the top of the hill.
I mean, look, I think Motivated brings up a comment too that's interesting, and we talked about this last year. I won't use the same verbiage because I don't want to get myself in trouble, Motivated. But Bryce Young, I mean, we talked about just the miraculous plays he could make, right, and how that could get you out of a jam. I mean, there we saw a lot of those situations last year where he was able to do that. And so, if you're asking the same thing this year from your quarterback, are you going to get that same thing? And as we said, I just don't. None of these guys are Bryce Young, and it's just that's the way it is. So, yeah, we will see if how Alabama does this season. All we know is, as we said, that the history and the numbers are there to support them finishing either first, tied for first, second. I mean, they finished second in the West in 2019. Every other year since 2011, they finished either first or tied for first in the West. So you just expect that now with them, but a lot will depend on that quarterback play. But again, guys, we appreciate you jumping in here. Great comments, and we'll get to some of them that some of you guys have sent here in just a few. But as always, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe button as well. You can also donate to the channel if you like. Hit that little heart sign. It's a little heart symbol down there with the dollar sign in it. Gives you a chance to leave a super chat. That donates to the channel, lets us make more videos. You guys know we're putting up a lot of videos every day. And so your support helps us make even more of those for you as we get ready to head into the season. So again, we appreciate all the interaction from you guys. And Chris, let's pull this up here real quick. Cortez jumps in with Vandy, and this is a good time, I think, just to quickly touch on Vandy, Hawaii real quick. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've already done 2 videos on it. And I know a lot of you guys have actually watched that already. A lot of interest in this Vandy Hawaii game in week 0. But Vandy ending with 7 regular season wins. I mean, listen, it's bold, but as we said, the front part of that schedule, I think Brian Edwards and I talked about this yesterday, and that'll go up in a video here soon. But man, I mean, if you had to just dream the wildest scenario you could get, I mean, Vandy could be. I don't think it's going to happen, right, Chris? But it's not outside of the realm of possibility to say that every single one of those first, what is it? Why can't I find their schedule?
I've got it in front of me, and I think I'm gonna Chuck, because Chuck Oliver, I was on his show this morning. I think he phrased it really well. He said, "I'm not saying Vandy can win 7 games right off the bat and go 7-0, but I am saying they can win each of those 7 games or something
Right.
along
There's the
those
better
lines."
point.
I may have, yeah, and I thought that's the way to phrase it that I think we've been searching for all off season.
Yeah, I mean that I think all of those games are winnable. I don't think they'll win every one of those games, but all of them are winnable. Hawaii at home, Alabama A&M at home, at Wake Forest, which I think is the ultimate season defining type game. And I know that sounds crazy, but if they can win that one, I think they got a great chance to be 4-0. They go to UNLV after that. Then you get Kentucky at home, then you get Missouri at home, then you go to Florida. You beat Kentucky last year, you beat Florida last year. I think it'll be harder to beat Kentucky this year. It's harder to play in the swamp against Florida, but we don't know what to expect from them. Missouri is a wild card, as we've said. So, yes, I think getting to 7 wins is not as crazy as some people may think. Now, the back part of that schedule, you better do a lot of work up front because the back half is Georgia, at Ole Miss, Auburn, at South Carolina, at Tennessee. I'm not seeing a lot of possibilities in there outside of maybe if things don't go as well as Auburn wants them to, possibly. But I just don't think they're winning the other 4. So yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it really is. A lot will be listen, a lot's gonna be defined, Chris, by the first game. Because we need to see exactly what this team's gonna look like against the Hawaii team that I think will be better. I mean, we saw some improvement, I think, from Timmy Chang's team last year, and we know what they're going to do offensively. And you want to see better defense from Vanderbilt because what was the stat again? I think last 2 years they've given up at least 35 points per game the past 2 seasons. So you want to see the defense improve. We think you're going to see AJ Swan take a big jump. Will Shepherd is just fantastic wide receiver. Don't know what to expect from the running back group, but I would really like to see Vanderbilt set the tone on Saturday because that will then maybe give you a little bit more confidence that, hey, don't look now, but maybe they become bowl eligible by the time we get to mid-October. So
You just brought up a phrase that I like, and I think it's important, and I think how they end too is also important. But Vandy has been awful out of the gate the last well, I mean they've been awful mostly in most things the last few years. But I mean they have given up so many first drive touchdowns the last few years. I remember last year they beat Hawaii 63-10, but they also gave up a touchdown on the first drive. So it's a Hawaii team that's going to come in. You've got that backdrop of that tragedy. I expect Hawaii is going to be very, very excited and motivated for this game. Of course, they got their brains beat in on the island a year ago. And so that's going to be motivation too. That's going to be one thing Vanderbilt is going to have to guard against on Saturday, Blake. I think Vandy wins this game handily. I don't bet, but if I did, I don't think 17.5 is enough. But if you're looking for a path, it's not hard to carve out a scenario because I'll give you 2 things. One's the start. The other thing is they could not defend the pass for anything a year ago. And what is Hawaii going to do? First down, second down, third down. Blake, it's going to throw the
Yeah.
ball.
Well, they got a good running back too that
Yeah.
that I think they'll utilize. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Vandy fans will tell you over the years, game ones can scare the living daylights out of you because there have been so many examples. Again, we know, right? Clark Lee era started with it when they lost that game to ETSU 23-3, and everybody at that point's thinking, "What have we done here?" But now you're seeing the improvement, and you've seen the progress. You saw it last year, and like we've all said, I think they're going to be improved this year. It's just, can they find the wins to match that? Can they get that one extra win to become bowl eligible? They took a big jump last year. But, Chris, there's also games in the past you think of, like the Temple game, right? Game one. And there's many others I know I'm forgetting. But that's just the way it works. And so Vanderbilt fans have every right to be a little concerned about game one, even if you think that everything, is clicking and you feel like you're about to take that step as a program. But Hawaii is the kind of team that does have a very dedicated approach to how they want to play. And it's, a little unique. And so I think it's, can they just put it all together and challenge this Vanderbilt team? I think, and I'll give away a tiny spoiler. Brian Edwards, we said, our betting expert here, 2 decades plus, he said, if there's one thing you like about this game, and I think we all agree, it's points. I would have to believe that you're going to see some points in this game. So if you're a betting person, go watch the video that I did with Brian, him breaking down this game and what he likes about it. Definitely the point total is the most intriguing aspect, I think, because I do feel like both teams will find a way to score some here.
Here's another thing, and I think this goes against everything Clark Lee is tried to create, but let's also face it, Vanderbilt has not been in this position in a while. Because you remember, Vanderbilt went to Hawaii last year. I think it was an 8-point favorite at kickoff, ended up winning in lopsided fashion, but they're 17.5-point favorite. And look, if you're in that locker room, in the back of your head is, we beat the brakes off these guys a year ago on their field, thousands of miles from here. Why would this year be any different? So I don't know if complacency is something Vanderbilt is going to have to fight on Saturday night. That sounds really weird, but I mean, in the back of everybody's head is what happened a year ago, Blake.
Well, and also I think in the front of everybody's mind is, I mean, look, Hawaii is going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but like, come on. I mean, given everything that's happened there, I mean, I feel like that's a team that, like you said, if you're not a Vanderbilt fan, it's hard to root against Hawaii this weekend. So again, just given everything with the wildfires and all that, and so that is like the mental aspect and those kind of things too. So yeah, I mean, I think this will be a Hawaii team that's ready to get out on the field and sort of just play football. I think there's definitely something to that as well. And so, yeah, it will be, again, interesting, I think, just to see how this plays out for both teams and if Vanderbilt can kind of get off to a good start this season, because they're going to need it, I think, if they're going to, like we said, really kind of set the tone for that first part of the schedule, which gives them a lot of opportunity, I believe. So.
Yeah, wrapping up some thoughts on this. I think Blake and I both think Vanderbilt is going to win handily. And what is the game time temperature going to be? It's probably going to be close to 90, probably above that by a couple of degrees.
Well, maybe we get a weather report on here each week on Fridays. But yeah, it is going to be hot. I don't think there's no doubt. So
Yeah. I don't know that favors either team. I mean, look, it's hot and humid in Hawaii too. Now you may have the travel factor. I don't know when the jet lag and stuff like that starts to wear off. I know that I don't know when Hawaii got to Nashville. I do know I did see something on Twitter yesterday about them practicing at a school not far from where I live. So I know they were at least here on Thursday. I would presume they wouldn't just pop off a plane and hit the practice field. So I don't know how that factors in, if it factors in. Vanderbilt practice in heat all summer. So I don't think that's going to be a factor. But here's what I do think is a factor. Clark Lee has recruited a lot better the last couple of years, and you're starting to see some of that show up. some of the kids that they're bringing as freshmen are better than the ones that he inherited a couple of years ago. That's a team that is not full of household names. I mean, you got Will Shepherd, you've got AJ Swan, maybe CJ Taylor. I don't know that the average SEC fan could name more names than that if they can even name those three. But what you're going to have with Vandy, I think, Blake, is they're starting to build depth. They're starting to build it on the defensive line, where they'll probably play 9, 10, maybe 11 guys Saturday night. And that is where James Franklin got it right with them. They didn't have household names, but they had guys you could roll out there. And guess what? They went from blowing games in the fourth quarter to winning games in the fourth quarter. You're starting to see a little bit of that. And I think that is where you see the separation between Vanderbilt and Hawaii on Saturday night.
All right, Chris, we appreciate you joining us. The other Chris, good Friday to Chris and everyone else in the comments. We appreciate you guys and everybody watching on the replay as well. Chris also got Vandy going with 5, not 7. He's not as bullish on the 7 wins here for them. But again, guys, we appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button, really helps us out. The like button as well. If you enjoy it, you can leave a super chat as well. We've had some nice super chats here the past couple of days to get us started. So leave a super chat. It'll highlight your message in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen, and we will thank you for your donation to the channel. Helps us make more videos. And if you know anybody's interested in sponsoring us here at Southeastern 14, we are accepting advertisers for the upcoming season about to kick off. So you can advertise with us. Check out the email at the bottom of the screen. You can email us if you're interested in sponsoring the show. And Chris, I think anything else you want to get to, guys, we're going to turn it over to you here soon. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback, anything, you can ask questions about anything on earth. Now, I'm not saying we're going to answer them, but you can ask questions and we'll get to them. But anything SEC football related, we always enjoy. So
yeah, to what Blake just said, we have not been doing this YouTube channel very long. Blake, we've only been doing it like this. We had a channel for a year, but we didn't really use it a ton. So we're really only a little over a year old. We had over 250,000 views in the last month. So it's starting to blow up here pretty quickly. Blake, one more thing before we end the show. We may go rapid fire with user comments and questions, but this still sticks with me a day later. I've heard other people talk about it. I don't think this is wrong. This is like the NCAA is just giving its last little breath and trying to pick people where it can. The more I think about the Mason Smith suspension, just so stupid. You could have given the kid a suspension a year ago while he was hurt, but no, let's kick him while he's down. Let's give him a game to start the season, just to show people we still got a little clout. And I guess you saw, usually the narrative we heard was the NCAA likes to work with institutions and let them level their own punishment, blah, blah, blah. Well, they didn't accept Michigan's remedy. They gave Jim Harbaugh 3 games. I don't know. This just seems like the last little gasp by a petty little man to try to get some respect where no one has it.
Well, if you didn't watch our video yesterday, so we did that within the live stream yesterday, but we also put out the separate clip. And I mean, the title says it all. Mason Smith's suspension for LSU versus Florida State is ridiculous. And that's really all I have to say. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's just silly. It's petty. I'd say this about anybody. And I know they're going to people say, oh, Florida State fans may come in and say, oh, well, come on, guys. You're just saying that because LSU lost a good player. No. If it was the reverse, I'd say the same thing. Like, it's just ridiculous. We talked about the NCAA over the years, and I really don't have anything else to add on that because I think it's, if you can't see it and just sort of see the inconsistencies with these kind of decisions, I don't know what else to say. So, yeah.
How do we explain Tennessee in that light? Was that just the offenders are gone now? Because that would be the common denominator. Harbaugh is still at Michigan, and Mason Taylor, or excuse me, Mason Smith, Mason Taylor also is still at LSU.
Mason Taylor.
That's fun with that yesterday.
That was a joke from yesterday. I apologize, guys. Yesterday I got Bobby Petrino.
Brought Bobby Fisher into it,
and I brought Bobby Fisher into this. And let's be honest, Bobby Fisher has nothing to do with Texas A&M's offense this year. He had good offense on the chessboard, from what I remember, but has nothing to do with Connor Wegman's development in College Station. So yeah, the NCAA, Chris, I don't know. They are what they are.
Yeah, I just was so stunned when that news came out Wednesday night. Like, wait a minute, we still suspend people for improper benefit, and it wasn't like, I mean, they did it just a few weeks before all the NIL stuff came into play, and again, I think some of it was done by his agent. I don't know what else you say. I'll just say this: if people have not heard this before, I used to think people piled on to the NCAA, and it got to be a little bit of a caricature to where it almost got overboard. But if you've ever actually been on the phone and talked to someone from the NCAA, as I have, I will not disclose the conversation, what it was about, all that stuff, just out of respect for the person I spoke to. But I remember hanging up the phone and just going, A, I can't believe some of the stuff I just heard. And B, now from personal experience, I understand why people say the stuff that they say.
All right. Well, Chris, Corey's got some thoughts here. We appreciate the nice words, Corey. We appreciate that. Woo Pig from Cincinnati. He's waiting on the Must Bus. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff in the off season on the Must Bus as well. If you're interested in SEC basketball, check out some of the stuff I've done solo. Max Barr has joined me for a lot of stuff. So a lot of off season stuff, not just on the Must Bus, but also SEC basketball in general. So season's almost here. I know it's crazy to think. We're just now starting SEC football season. Really think about it. Basketball season's only like 2 months away. So we're starting to put out some preseason stuff there. Check out all of our position rankings and everything we've done on that. But talking about flipping the roster defensively, you can see Arkansas knocking off LSU early on. I mean, that's an interesting game, isn't it? Because, like, I think what I always look at, Chris, and I wish I could bring up schedules as quickly as you can, apparently. You got them all printed out over there and all this other stuff, but I got to bring it up on the computer. But, like, I think one of the interesting things about Arkansas' schedule, I don't think it's as daunting as last year's, right? But it's not great once you get into SEC games. And so we talked about they start the season, Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU. We know how fun the BYU game was last year. That's a 7:30 Eastern kickoff, ESPN2. This year, but they got that game at LSU on September 23rd, and after that, that's the gauntlet, right? At LSU versus A&M in Arlington, at Ole Miss, at Alabama. Woo! 4 straight games against those teams, all the way from DWR there. So, yeah, it's not maybe the whole schedule's not as tough for Arkansas, Chris, but man, that stretch right there is pretty brutal. So.
I'm kind of interested to see how that new receiving group plugs in, because I think the perception coming out of Fayetteville is they're in better shape than if you just look at the roster and say, well, they got this guy from oh, good grief, the D3 school in Michigan that I'm drawing a blank on. In other words, you start looking at the places they got some of their transfers. It's not the most impressive list, but I think they think those guys can play. And then when you got KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, not to mention some depth behind Sanders at running back, they've got some other dudes there who can play a little bit. That can cover a lot of ills if that is the case. And I'm not saying their receiving core is bad. I'm just saying you look across the SEC, more what some of those other teams had because we've seen them play before. Hillsdale College, that's the thing I was trying to think of earlier. Yeah, and Corey named the guy in the comment here. I think it's Tesla is how you pronounce that. I've heard it as Tesla, but I don't think that's correct. But point being is, let's say even if they are a little under the competition at that position group, when you got Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson to deal with that, I don't think I'd trade that running back quarterback combo for anybody in the league. Maybe not anybody in the country. That's a lot to deal with there alone.
Yep, they got some talent. We talked about it. Very interested to see just what Travis Williams does for that defense, and they're going to be aggressive. We know that for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, the sacks should be there, and I think that anytime you put the pressure on the quarterback, we know what that can do for a defense, and that can make things elsewhere a lot easier when you start doing that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. We appreciate also a comment here from Jonathan, Chris's long lost cousin. I'm pretty sure I haven't checked the ancestry.com, but I have to assume these guys are related in some way. Anyways, we appreciate the kind words, Jonathan. We do. So, yeah. But anything else, guys? 5-minute warning here. If you have any questions, comments, anything, as we said, you can check out all of our Vanderbilt Hawaii preview stuff. We've got predictions up for every SEC team heading this season. Bowl predictions. Blaine's doing our game by game predictions. We've got 4 or 5 of those out already. The rest of those will go up next week. And again, all of our team previews are up. We did those over a month ago. So you can go back and find those in the archive on the channel. Be sure to set those notifications on so you know when we go live each weekday, 11 Central, so you don't miss that. And any sort of impromptu live streams we do throughout the week. We'll definitely be doing something on Saturday nights, most likely. So just to kind of keep you up to date on everything we got going here at Southeastern 14. So
we've got our eyes on Hawaii Vandy this weekend. There's some other games. Is the best of the lot Notre Dame and Navy?
Probably.
I mean, it is not exactly a star-studded schedule. I'm going to double check this as we're doing it to make sure I've not missed anybody. But this is a weekend that you're just watching that you're happy college football is back, not because the games in front of us are tremendous.
Yeah, just as a note, Brian Edwards, like I said, our Vegas betting expert, he's going to give his picks every week. So you'll be able to find his best bets. We put his video out last night on the channel, which, depending on when you're watching this, that would have been Thursday night. You can check out his picks for week 0. Now, again, it's pretty much, a little bit SEC because there's only one game, but he does give his picks elsewhere. So if you're an SEC fan, wants to bet on non-SEC games, Brian will help you do that some this season too. So great asset for us. And we appreciate all his contributions. He'll probably jump on here with us as well sometimes during these this 1 hour during the weekdays to give you some more betting advice if you're into that kind of thing. So, all right, Chris, anything else and we can wrap up?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the schedule. We do have Southern Cal playing against San Jose State, which was a little sneaky at times last year. That's 30.5. I'm not saying San Jose State's going to win the game, but I remember they gave Auburn a little bit of trouble. Not very familiar with what they've got this year. UMass and New Mexico State in a bottom of the barrel to see who gets the jump on the worst team in the FCS, perhaps. Again, Navy Notre Dame, that is a 2:30 Eastern kickoff. Notre Dame favored by 21 there. Here's one to kind of watch in an area of the country. Jacksonville State makes its debut as an FBS program with the game against UTEP. So not a lot to choose from this weekend, but if you want to know your menu of options, there they are. We've also got Florida International and Louisiana Tech, and I think that's it. Ohio at San Diego State, and there you go. That's your choices.
All right. Well, that's great. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, look, it's week 0, as we said. There's not a lot of games, but Brian's got you covered if you want the insight into those games as well. Like I said, he does a really good job breaking down these other games too. So I know New Mexico State, UMass may not be appealing for SEC fans, but folks, Brian's got some good knowledge on that one. He's actually liking a play on that. So check out his video.
Well, and you will, if you want a reason to watch that game, who's got UMass next week? Is it A&M?
Auburn plays both New Mexico State and UMass.
Okay, well, there you go. So, there's your reason to watch.
There you go, Auburn fans. SEC tie-in. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you as always. SEC football, regular here. Got the Vols by 50. He said September 2nd. He's got the Vols winning by 50.
He might not be wrong.
So we did a preview on that game, Tennessee, Virginia. We like the Vols, I think, to cover that spread in a significant fashion based on the matchup there. And again, Chris, yes, we appreciate it. You, as always, for joining us here. And yeah, Chris, I think that's all we've got. So wrap us up here. Hold on. Wait, who do y'all think is the top 3 games? Top 3 games next week, Miguel asks. I mean, LSU, Florida State's in there. Who else is in there? I mean, I think in terms of just intrigue, like, I don't know if it's going to,
South Carolina, North Carolina is
that's
very
there,
intriguing.
But I was going to even say Florida, Utah too. And I know, like, we're tying all SEC in there, but I just want to see what this Florida team's going to be. And I think we have a great idea of what that is when they play this game against Utah, because Utah should be fantastic. So,
yeah, but will Utah be fantastic next week? Because there's big questions about major parts of their team playing.
But even if they don't, I mean, that still, to me, makes it even more interesting about Florida.
Sure.
Is because, okay, if this is the opportunity that's there, then, hey, if Florida goes and wins this game again, remember, I thought people gave them a lot of chance to win the game last year. They won, but this is different because you're going on the road. But think about how that changes the perception of this Florida team that everybody has been all over the place on. So no matter who's on the field for Utah next week, which I know if Cam Rising doesn't play, that's significant because he's, as we know, a really good quarterback. But nonetheless, I still think we learn a lot about Florida next week. So that's very high on my list just because I want to see what this Gators team is, because I know we've all heard so many different things about them. And I think we finally learn something, at least something significant about them next week. So,
yeah, the drop from those 3 SEC games to the rest, it's like, okay, who's your fourth best game? Probably Tennessee and Virginia, because it's 2 Power 5 teams, but I don't think we think that's going to be a game for very long. I mean, there's a precipitous drop off from that top tier of games, which isn't a huge tier, to just some real dogs there.
Give me Clemson Duke too. Clemson goes to Duke to open the season. A nice conference opener in the ACC. I think, give me that one on the list too. That one's probably, and that's a Monday night game, right? So, that's the Monday night game, September 4th. So that's another one I'll put on the list if you're looking outside of that. So,
Blake, any parting thoughts?
Nope. As I said, guys, we will. Yes, there you go. It's all caps today. Like yesterday, you were giving us props, but today you're all caps. That's how we know you're ready for the weekend. You're ready for week 0. So even though the Hogs aren't playing, I know, but you're ready for week 0 here. But no, again, guys, hit that subscribe button before you hop off. Share it with your friends. You can follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern, and anything else. Super chats, donate, join the It Just Means More tier. That's our membership tier, $4 a month. You support the channel. We have quite a few people in that, and we appreciate their contributions as well. And every Monday through Friday, the SEC Daily here on Southeastern 14. Turn those notifications on.
We'll be back Monday. Hopefully, Gavin Schoenwald will rejoin us. We'll recap a little Vandy, Hawaii this weekend. I think you'll have some more quarterback battles probably by that point, settled or close to being settled. I'm sure that'll be a topic. We can get into some more games from week 1. All those things will be here for it. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. God bless you all. Everybody have a safe and happy weekend.